For Sergeant First Class Michael Schlitz, nothing could top serving as a U.S. Army Ranger. And from the moment he joined the Army, it was all he wanted out of life. He became a Ranger School instructor, tasked with molding the next generation of elite soldiers. When he was deployed to Iraq at the outset of the surge, Mike Schlitz welcomed yet another challenge, eager to prove himself among the Army's best. February 27, 2007, Southwest Baghdad. 6 months into his deployment, Sergeant First Class Schlitz prepared to lead a mission to locate and disarm the roadside bombs that were the bane of U.S. forces in Iraq. The mission was routine. The soldiers rose early, then headed out for a 15-hour day on patrol. Leading the way were 4 heavily armored vehicles outfitted with metal detectors to locate hidden explosives. Bringing up the rear of the convoy in a lightly armored Humvee was Mike Schlitz, joined by his driver, Corporal Lorne Henry Jr., his gunner, Sergeant Richard Sukinka, and his medic, Sergeant Jonathan Cadavero. The sun had just begun to rise a few hours into their mission when the convoy approached a dead-end street. Reaching the end of the street, the convoy slowly turned, making its way back to the open road. As Schlitz's vehicle passed over the drainpipe, there was a sudden flash. A massive explosion rocked the Humvee. Insurgents had buried 2 artillery shells in a propane tank next to the underground drainpipe, making the IED undetectable. They'd waited until the Humvee was passing above to detonate the bomb. The blast knocked Schlitz from his vehicle. Upon hitting the ground, instinct kicked in, and he leapt to his feet to help his men. It was only as he neared the smoldering Humvee that he felt the flames that had engulfed his body. The heat unbearable, he fell to the ground in a desperate attempt to extinguish the flames. But covered in propane, the fire was too intense. He began to accept that he would die, here, face down, in the dirt of Iraq. His comrades in the Humvee had all been killed in the blast. Suddenly, a cool rush came over his body, as if he was hit with a wave of ice water. Soldiers from his convoy had rushed to his aid with a fire extinguisher. The agony of being burned alive was washed away by a peaceful calm, and a thought, maybe I've got a fighting chance. A medevac arrived, and Schlitz was loaded aboard. Then the morphine kicked in, and all went black. Mike Schlitz's fight was just beginning. Sergeant First Class Schlitz was evacuated to a military hospital for emergency surgeries in the secure green zone of Baghdad. He was then flown to hospitals in Germany, then to the States for additional surgeries. 10 times during these operations, his heart stopped beating, and 10 times his doctors brought him back. Now stabilized, but in a medically induced coma, Mike was joined at his bedside by his mother, Robbie. Through dozens of surgeries over the next 4 months, Robbie wouldn't leave his side. Mike began to regain consciousness and to recognize the full extent of his wounds. He had lost both hands, with burns to 85% of his body. He was legally blind and couldn't walk. Thoughts of suicide crept into his mind and soon became an obsession. His mother would not leave his side, and his brothers in arms still regarded him as a fellow Ranger. 6 months following the attack in Iraq, his physical therapist came to him with a simple command. Today, we are going to stand. Soon it was, today, we are going to take 1 step. Eventually, Mike was fitted with prosthetics, and simple tasks were once again part of Mike's life. With those simple tasks came hope. And along the way, Mike Schlitz, Army Ranger, found a new mission, a new purpose. In the years following his injuries, he began to tell his story. He spoke out on the scourge of suicide afflicting the veterans of his generation. He embraced his new life, one that was no longer dedicated to just himself, but to helping others. More than a decade has passed. Since that time, he's undergone more than 90 surgeries. Throughout his inspired recovery, he has dedicated himself to living a life that would make his lost brothers proud. By living such a life, he has achieved that, and so much more.